NFL training camp is here, which means it's time to break down the most intriguing battles. Plus, Hassan Reddick, well, he's holding out.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi again, everyone, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. He is Chris Carter. I'm James Rapien. Thank you so much for making us your first listen, not only today, but throughout training camp as we get you set for the 2024 season. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the app you need right now because you can create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And Chris, let's dive into what's going to be a really interesting training camp across the NFL. There's a lot of camp battles that we will be paying attention to here on the podcast. And Kevin Patra of NFL.com, he's an around the NFL writer, put together the most intriguing battles. And so, Kevin, we appreciate the idea. We're going to review your article and hijack it a little bit because I think it's interesting. And the first one, Chris, a bit surprising. The Las Vegas Raiders. I wouldn't have thought, when you think of most intriguing camp battles, I wouldn't have thought of the Raiders. And yet, Aiden O'Connell versus Gardner Minshew, the Devontae Adams Bowl, those two guys battling for that starting job in Vegas.
Yeah, it's funny, and it's even funnier with the Devontae Adams clip that came out through the receiver show, where you could say he was visibly frustrated, so much so the team could see it last year. I do wonder what's going to happen there, but I also feel like when you say those two names back to back as your top camp battle, how excited does that get people up in Las Vegas to see who wins that? And again, Aiden O'Connell, he does fine. Gardner Minshew does fine. But the bottom line is the Raiders need a lot of work. They need a lot of help. That's but part of what Antonio Pierce is going to be going through there. But I look at that and I think man, that's one that is going to be important for the sake of the team. And the Raiders no one's picking them to win the AFC West this year or to even really compete that much. They have some talent on it, but they have a lot of work that they need to be going on here. So I kind of look at that and I think I'm interested in what other teams are in there. And I kind of look down the list a little bit, and there are there are at least a couple position battle with another AFC West team that I found to be really interesting, and that's the Chargers, because they're looking at wide receiver and running back for significant starters, and that's where I think things could get really interesting when you see that's a team that did terribly last year, but this is supposed to be their come up year. They went and got Jim Harbaugh. This is supposed to be Justin Herbert's been wasted by Brandon Staley, so everything's supposed to be fixed. But now you got major questions at the two primary positions that Justin Herbert would be, working with to create plays out there. And I think it's interesting how a lot of these are in the AFC West where these camp battles are happening.
Yeah, you mentioned the AFC West and the Chargers. It seems like every year people, and really not as much this year, but the preseason hype is, they're a threat to the Chiefs.
Yep.
Ooh, look out for the Chargers. And you're not getting that as much this year, I think, because of the moving on from Keenan Allen. That wide receiver room looks much, much different. Although I really like Ladd McConkey. I wonder about Quentin Johnston and can he recover? Is Josh Palmer capable? Do they feel like a Brendan Rice or DJ Chark? And I used to love DJ Chark as a player. I feel like he's not the same guy he was a few years ago, but maybe he is. Maybe he's got some juice left. And if he does, they should be able to get it out of him with Justin Herbert. So I do think that's an intriguing battle, because if a couple wide receivers emerge in Los Angeles with Harbaugh's track record, with Justin Herbert, maybe this is the year, even though they're not getting the necessary hype that they've gotten in the past, or the hype that maybe not was necessary, but certainly hype that has happened. Maybe this is the year that they feel like a legitimate playoff team that can make a run in January. So who knows? Wouldn't shock me there. You mentioned the AFC West, though, and the one that stands out, and it's something that I think is going under the radar, but for Kansas City, will Wanya Morris be their starting left tackle? Will it be Kingsley Suamataia, who could certainly be in the mix, a second rounder? I wonder which way they go But yeah, certainly Morris started 4 games, allowed 20 pressures, a couple of sacks, according to PFF. We'll see. But the 63rd overall pick in Sua Matia could certainly get that job.
Certainly. I think that could be an interesting battle to see who plays in the offensive line there. The Chiefs, this reigning Super Bowl champions, it's interesting to see them having a battle for that position that's going to be prime and keeping Patrick Mahomes upright and protecting the pocket, but that's something that they need there. I think we can also, in general, James, look at a lot of these random quarterback battles. And I say random because they're not the ones that really like make you like say, ooh, like this could be the game-changing team. They're all in teams that are kind of trying to fix things right now. You got the Denver Broncos with Bo Nix, Jared Stidham, and Zach Wilson. I mean, all three are in play there. And that's the kind of the crazy part of it, is that you don't know which one is going to win it. Bo Nix, of course, the rookie there. Jared Stidham, kind of the guy that just is, kind of stuck around the NFL. Zach Wilson, of course, was the top pick who has not lived up to that billing. But then you got the Patriots with Jacoby Brissett and their rookie Drake May. I think that's the one that kind of stirs my drink the most because of Drake May's potential and how high he was drafted. And this is the Patriots with a new coach. How does this even look like? The last time Bill Belichick wasn't the coach of the Patriots, I was in elementary school. So like, what does this look like with all the new look Patriots? And then of course also the Minnesota Vikings, who also had a high pick quarterback this year in JJ McCarthy, but he's going up against Sam Darnold, who hasn't really wowed at all in his career. So I think it's really interesting to see some of these young quarterbacks, especially these rookie quarterbacks, and how well do they do in these camp battles and how quickly do they ascend to these teams? Because the Broncos, no one's really expecting them to make noise, but the Patriots, people are very unsure about their status. But of course, with the Vikings, that was a team last year that found a way to win games with Josh Dobbs. You got Justin Jefferson, you got Jordan Addison. I do wonder, a rookie JJ McCarthy, the quarterback that you and I were kind of raising question marks about a lot this past year in the draft process, why people were valuing him so high. I'm kind of intrigued to see how well does he fit into the NFL with these plans.
And it worked out for the Vikings because they didn't have to move up to get him, right? That was part of our conversation pre-draft, is he going to go 5th? Is he going to go 6th? And they just stood pat, and he landed in their lap. And I believe, right? Or did they move up a spot? They might have moved up a spot. I can't remember.
But it wasn't like they moved up into the top 5.
They didn't mortgage. Yeah, they didn't mortgage a ton. They just made sure that Denver didn't get him. Right. Which, by the way, I would take JJ McCarthy over Bo Nix. And
same here.
And yet you're right. I think these rookie quarterbacks, when do they start? We know Caleb Williams is going to start. We know Jaden Daniels is going to start. I think both guys are going to be pretty darn good pretty quickly. Doesn't mean their teams are going to be good, but I think they're going to flash, and we're going to be like, oh yeah. Well, we know both have it in their own way because they have different styles. But what about these other guys? When does JJ McCarthy get on the field? When does a guy in Drake May, who from everything I've heard has the leadership, has the physical traits, all of those things, when does he take over in New England? Is it week 1 when I'm going to be seeing him here in Cincinnati? Is it week 7? I think that's a really interesting storyline. And then could Zach Wilson do it in Denver? I'd be shocked.
Yeah.
But I do think, and if you talk to people that do this for a living, Zach Wilson has the most arm talent, the liveliest arm, however you want to describe it, of those quarterbacks in Denver.
Right.
So that's clearly not enough, and hasn't been enough for him, and wasn't enough for him in New York. But it's interesting, especially if Bo Nix just isn't ready. If you're the Broncos, though, of course, if it's close, you're playing Bo Nix and you're rolling with him.
Absolutely. I hear you on that. Like, I feel like, again, if you're trying to get to your future, that's there. I genuinely see the Broncos as a team that's going to be, they're going to be pushing for a high pick again this year. I think the way that they've kind of handled their situation, they're still paying Russell Wilson to not be on their team $30+ billion. I think they're a team that's going to end up doing that. But the Vikings and the Patriots, I'm interested to see what do they do? What's their setup for their rookie quarterbacks if those guys do win those jobs there? Because again, they're going up against other kind of journeyman quarterbacks themselves. Brissett's been a guy that can hold down the fort, that can not lose you games, and I think that's a good bar for Drake May to have to get over, because Brissett's been a starting quarterback, in spots, and he's kind of been decent at, hey, let's just hold the line here. If Drake Maye can beat that might be a good test for him. But how quickly does he beat that is the question. You talked about his skills. I covered him in the ACC. I've seen him, firsthand switch to his opposite throwing hand and throw a touchdown, which was just ridiculous when he saw that. So like this guy has an it factor to him, and I think Drake Maye, of those quarterbacks, I'm most excited to see what Drake Maye does. But of those teams, I think I'm more excited to see the Vikings simply because of the talent on their roster and what could happen, how the receivers could make things easier on JJ McCarthy.
Sure. I agree. I think you look at what he's set up, what he's in position to do. I think he could certainly make some noise. We will see if he makes some noise. You know who's making noise though, Chris? Hassan Reddick. We will get to the Jets' disgruntled pass rusher coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the app you need right now. They're an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets easier and faster. So whether you're looking for MLB tickets, whether you want to get ahead of the game for this NFL season, or maybe there's a concert coming up in your area that you want to go to, Game Time is the app you need to download so you can take advantage of those last-minute deals, those zone deals, those flash deals that Game Time offers. They have views from all seats in the venue, panoramic views, so you're going to know what view you're going to get for those tickets or with those tickets. And by the way, they have all-in pricing as well, so there's no hidden fees. All you have to do is click the all-in pricing tab in the Game Time app. It's real simple. I've done it, and you can too. They make getting tickets to your favorite live events easier, faster, and you can save money with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account or redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
We're back here on the Locked On NFL podcast. Chris Carter, James Rapien, covering NFL training camp starts. We gave you some training camp battles, but let's go over the big news that's kind of happened on Tuesday, and that's Hassan Reddick and his situation there. He's going to be holding out, and that's after he was acquired by the Jets, over this past offseason for a future draft pick. I think it was a third with the chance to become a second if certain terms are met or whatever. But this is a guy who was a good edge rusher who was bringing up, and now he's holding out until he gets a big deal with the Jets. And if I'm the Eagles, I'm kind of like, this is why I traded him, because I didn't want to have to deal with this. Because again, you look at Hassan Reddick's career, and he's kind of moved around which linebacker spot that he lines up in, and he's been a guy that's consistently got after the quarterback. For the last 4 straight seasons, he's had 10 or more sacks, and last year he finished with 11 in Philadelphia and played all 17 games. The year before that, he had 16 with 5 forced fumbles. Very impressive in that year. But it seemed like the Eagles are kind of like, yeah, but you're not the guy we're going to give the huge big money contract for. And I think that's the big question the Jets have to ask themselves. The Jets are in a win now mode. They have Aaron Rodgers. They're trying to do this with this crew. You don't know how much longer that you're going to keep that together. I think it's a kind of an interesting spot here. James, how long do you think this holdout goes? And do you think that this situation kind of gets resolved, Reddick gets his contract and he shows up? Or is this going to be one of those things that lingers and it kind of like puts a cloud over the Jets season before it even begins?
Yeah, it certainly could. I mean, this is very much a Jets gonna jet situation where they had Bryce Huff, and now Bryce Huff ends up in Philly, and you give Philly an asset, and you get back Hassan Reddick, who you have to pay. You didn't want to pay Bryce Huff. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. It didn't make sense in the moment. There was always this threat. Now, the hope probably, if you're the Jets, is you give him an extra $1 million or $2 million this year, and he shows up and is ready to go and is ready to play, and he gives you exactly what you're looking for, which was sort of a hired 1-year instant boost to your pass rush to take that defense, which was already awesome, to another level with Quinnen Williams, and You got Sauce Gardner on the outside. We know who they have. So I get the logic. But man, when you do a deal like this, you want to make sure you know you're going to be able to get the contract issue resolved. And if you're not confident in that, you do it blind, this is what could happen. You know, it's a distraction. It's going to be a distraction until something gets done. And look, Reddick does have all the motivation, or should have all the motivation in the world to play well this year when he does show up. And I think it's a win. But you want him to be happy and you want him to play well because you're all in this year if you're the Jets. So it's a rocky situation. It's a situation they could have avoided by just paying Bryce Huff. And instead they had a void and they had to give up a premium asset to get Hassan Reddick, who's unhappy.
Yeah. And I think now you're in a position where you got to pay this. And this is always the struggle with getting free agents, is that if you don't pay them right away, there's not a loyalty there. You know, there's not like a sense of like, oh, this is the team that drafted me. They have a plan. It's like, no, there's a reason that he got you. I think that's why some people might be hesitating on Brandon Ayuk. If you're not trying to pay him $30 million a year, you're trying to wait and see what are you going to have to pay that guy to make him happy so that he can be part of your team moving forward. But I think that's exactly what's going on with the Jets right now, is that they went and got Hassan Reddick, and who knows, maybe Jets management, this is part of what they expected. Maybe they're thinking, well, Hassan Reddick's a veteran, don't need him to be in the early part of training camp, but they got to resolve this at some point, because if he's holding out and he doesn't get his deal, like, you know, how long will he hold out? Will he miss all of training camp? Will he come back at the start of the season? Will he hold out going into the season? We've seen players, you know, do that and say, you know what, I'm not coming back until I get my money, and hold that line. I think that's a tough question on the Jets right now. Like you said, the Jets, you know, when you say Jets are going to jet, this is an organization that they have not paid off their fans for the misery that they've given them for years. And last year was supposed to be one of those years. And then Aaron Rodgers goes down within a snap of the start of the season, and that kind of throws everything off. This is so you already missed out on one of the years that it was supposed to be like everything's changed, everything's going to be different type of seasons. Now you have to make this season different or else. And I feel like that's the pressure. I'm like, if I'm Hassan Reddick, I'm like, I get it. Like, you know, if I'm his agent, I'm like, yeah, the pressure's on them to deliver right now. It's not like you're doing this to the Chiefs, who can be like, you know what, buddy, we got a whole system here. You got Patrick Mahomes. We ain't worried about you. Like, you know, come when you want to come. If you don't want to play on the Super Bowl champion team, fine. Or even other teams that are listed really well. This is the Jets, who there's a lot of pressure on this organization to deliver very, very soon. So I get Hassan Reddick's play here. I wonder what's going to happen with the Jets management, how they approach this situation, because future deals and everything, you know, what is the makeup of the future rosters look like? You know, how far do they pay? Do they pay him in advance? Because, you know, I look at how their rosters constructed, and again, they're kind of in a win now mode. Like right now, their cap space for this year is $5.7 million, and that goes up next year to 57. They'll have some players, but they're going to have to refigure out how do they construct the roster, because they're going to be losing players. So I do think it's interesting, and I wonder how, you know, if Hassan Reddick gets paid, how much and for how long, and what satisfies him to keep him around long term.
Yeah, it's just a huge thing that they could have avoided, and instead it's another storyline to follow with the Jets. Maybe it works out. It could work out. Maybe they throw him a couple extra million, but I'm making that sound really simple, and maybe it isn't that simple. And so if you're Hassan Reddick, you have a lot of leverage right now. I get using it. You don't know how long you're going to play at this elite level. So we will see. We're also going to see if the NFL is going to go from 17 to 18 games, the latest, from the NFL and the NFLPA on negotiations.
But first, I want to remind you this show is sponsored by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for, and with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers.
Let's keep things rolling on a Wednesday edition of Locked On NFL. And, well, this, according to Mark Mask in Washington, and it's kind of gone all over on Tuesday morning when it broke, but the NFL Players Association and the NFL have had discussions at a, quote, very high level over potentially adding an 18th regular season game to their schedule. NFLPA Executive Director Lloyd Howe told Mark. So, here we go. We talked about it a few weeks ago when Joe Burrow made his comments about wanting a second bye and all of those things. Discussions have started. I don't know about you, Chris. To me, it just feels inevitable at this point. This is Thanos. It's happening. There's gonna be an 18th game. It's just a matter of when.
Dread it, run for it. Destiny arrives all the same, and that's the NFL, because the NFLPA has no power to stop anything. I've said this for years. We said this on this show. The NFLPA as a union does not have the teeth that it needs to stop the NFL from doing things. This is something that NFL players have talked about, like, man, do we really need an 18-game season? And now it's gone from, man, do we really need an 18-game season to, okay, what can we get out of this? Because, they can try to get something out of it, maybe one less preseason game, maybe something else, but the NFL sees an opportunity to make more money, and they're going to take it. That's all ultimately what this comes down to. I still say, when they expanded to a 17-game season, there should have been 2 bye weeks. They said, like, you know what? Season's too long. Expand the rosters, add 5 more roster spots so teams can have more depth across the board, and give every team another bye week so that they can have more chances to recover their bodies. Now, with 18 games, and I know we talked about this before because Joe Burrow said, give 2 bye weeks. I've been saying that for years. Give them 3 bye weeks with an 18-game season, because again, we're talking about these bodies are getting beaten up and broken down, and I continue to reiterate this, but so many major playoff matchups are marred by major injuries to major players that happen from just wear and tear, from guys that are just beaten up after a long season. And that's not going to stop the philosophy of the game. It's not going to say that everything's going to get, everyone's going to start having pillow fights out there and that everyone's just magically going to be healthy all the time. But now you can actually have more time to rest in between parts of the season. Teams, the training staffs even plan around the bye weeks for how that they kind of push players, and they kind of have players set up so that eventually they can get their rest around those bye weeks. And again, it's just 1 so far. If you added 2 and then I think 3, that gives you so many other chances to be like, all right, we know that this is a push here. The rest is coming at least 3 different times. That is how you get an 18-game season, and I think make it work. And again, 18 games seasons and 3 bye weeks doesn't mean that that there's just less football out there if you're having more bye weeks. It just means you're expanding how long the football goes, because if more teams are having bye weeks, well, that means more people are tuning into the less games that are happening, as they are on TV each week, instead of having 14 games. You might have 13 games or 12 games on a week, but those teams are still playing those 18 games. So I really think that if they're doing this, the players need to be getting more time off, more resource, more anything to make it easy on their bodies, because that's ultimately what's going to get beat up with another game added to what's already a long season.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen here is the NFL will probably give up 1% of revenue, give up another or 0.5% to the players. Yeah. And the NFLPA will be like, see, we got you more money. And then they'll get a second buy. I do think that'll happen. And strategically, if you're the NFL, why wouldn't you want to extend it? You're already dominating the calendar.
Right.
And there's very little dead time. Why not extend it just a little bit and go that route? I think it makes a ton of sense. I also think that the NFL would, in their minds, like the lineup, the Super Bowl Sunday with President's Day right after it. So some people are off work the next day, and you can have Super Bowl Sunday, and then people stop complaining that they have to work Monday, even though it's really not that late and it doesn't really impact me that much. Anyways, it doesn't impact me that much. I know it impacts some, or people feel like it impacts some. I don't get hammered watching Super Bowls either. So that's the other part of it. I think that's part of why people view it that way. But regardless, it's going to happen. I think it could happen as soon as next season. I really do. It won't happen
Yeah,
this year. This
I
year's
agree.
already set. But I think that the fact that talks have happened now, they want something done during this CBA. And so what concessions will the owners in the league need to make to get it done, to get the NFL Players Association to agree? I think it's a little more money, and I think it's an extra buy. They do those things. There's probably some other little things, of course. It's not that simple, but I think those are the big topics. Once they hit those, it's going to be a smooth sailing almost to an 18th game. And I would be pretty surprised, honestly, if it doesn't happen as soon as next season.
No, yeah, I'm right with you. This is an inevitability at this point. I look at how the NFL operates. They see it again. The players, because the other part of this too is that, like, with another week of games, this is more TV revenue that they get. There's more ticket revenue. In general, this is going to generate more money. And whereas it won't change the percentage, the proportions that the players get, it will increase the amount of money that's thrown in there. So this will also increase the salary cap for every team in the coming years. So like there's going to be more money the players will receive some benefits from that. Contracts will be able to get higher, for as far as like the top paid guys, and then that'll give the teams more money to spend on different things. But again, I don't think the issue, getting paid is still the thing. Players should be making, a bigger percentage of the pie than they do. But I also think that when you look at this, like they can't even get to that part of the conversation because they're still trying to just get to the health part of the conversation. And that's, again, the problem with, I think, the relationship between the NFL and the NFLPA. I'm going to maintain that. But as far as 18-game seasons, I know fans are like, hey, more football for me, great. And listen, I get it because, we're football content creators here, James. We write, we record, we talk radio, we talk podcasts, we talk TV. And during the dead months when there's absolutely nothing happening, it slows down. And we have to get kind of creative. We take deeper looks at things. But when the season's going, everyone's locked in, everyone's focused. And so I get expanding the season. That's going to bring a lot of excitement to fans. I very much think that with this needs to be serious considerations as far as the health of the players, the longevity of the players. Because also here's another thing about this, not just how well they get to the end of the season, but now with tacking this on, this also might shorten careers for players if there's not more considerations pointed. Like guys, we've started to get used to with modern medicine, guys lasting a bit longer, certain positions being able to get 8-10 years, quarterbacks playing 15-20 years if they are good enough to last that long. But when you start to continue to lengthen seasons and not give them any breaks in between and make it kind of rougher on their bodies, it's going to make it harder for some of these stars to not only get stick around for the playoffs, but stick around for more years. This is why I think we know money isn't going to be something that these players get. Like, they're not going to get a bigger piece of the pie than they already have. But the one thing that they should be able to fight for is finding better ways to manage the season to allow them to not be as destroyed when they get to the end of it.
Yeah, I think when you look at 2 games and you say it out loud, it's only 2 games more. Well, those 2 games add up. And those 2 games also add up when you're talking about not just 2 extra regular season games, but then going into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And could that be when the injury happens, right? And all of those things. So, yeah, absolutely. It is a huge, huge factor. One we will be monitoring. Training camp is here. Make sure that you check out Locked On Steelers if you're looking for a second listen with Chris Carter. Locked On Bengals for me if you're looking for a second listen. Obviously, Locked On NFL Daily. Make sure you subscribe as well on YouTube. Follow wherever you get your podcast. And for Chris Carter, I'm James Rapien. Thank you so much for watching and listening to Locked On NFL.